Hello and welcome to the first of our 5 days of mental wealth. Today we're going to focus on the Good Work Pledge, and I am delighted to have with me Shelley Austin from InspireAll, who's one of our founder pledges. Hi Shelley, thanks for coming to talk to us.
No problem at all.
Shelley has had a love affair with the leisure sector for over 20 years, and she joined InspireAll, which is a charitable trust, in 2016. She's worked across most of the contracts and a variety of challenges. And like most people, one of her biggest challenges has been staying connected with the team over the pandemic and making sure they're okay. So team wellbeing is a big part of your job, isn't it, Shelley? So what kind of first made you think about joining the Good Work Pledge?
As you just alluded to, Lindsay, the well-being of my team has always been a priority for me, but obviously over the past 12 to 15 months, that has just heightened, but also the challenge in achieving that has just come in so many different variations, so many different levels. And bearing in mind, I work with a team that range from 18 up to 70, how you enhance and kind of capture what everyone needs from a wellbeing perspective has just heightened, has just changed, and it's just varied. So for me, recognizing obviously the survey initially and the absolute importance of that, it just validated everything that I was trying to kind of capsulate within what I was doing from an internal perspective, trying to communicate with them externally whilst they were furloughed. It was just the natural progression to go, do you know what, if it's really important, put my money where my mouth is. And the Good Work Pledge absolutely resonated with us on that level.
Lovely. And so I know one of the things we talked about when we were preparing for this is the pledge is about committing to action. It doesn't mean that you're already necessarily meeting all those standards, although you might have been.
Oh, absolutely. And I think sector-wise, various sector-wise, we may well have a document that says this is our well-being approach, but actually very often it is just a document and there's no real action or no real culture. And I think that's so important in a topic like well-being. You know, people have to be comfortable in talking about things. They have to know where to go. They have to know what to say. And for me, starting the pledge was just literally a starting point. So it was really great through the diagnostic tools, through the feedback of the survey, to be able to reflect and say, actually, we do this really well. This is where we could improve, but also then how we bridge the gap. And in bridging the gap, it doesn't mean that you have to bring in additional resources, doesn't mean you have to bring in extra expenses. It just means that you are asking the questions and finding solutions that work within your remit.
So when you sign the pledge, you get a number of tools. So you get a guide to help you start, you get use of the logo, and you get a diagnostic tool. The diagnostic tool helps you assess where you are against the 6 mental health core standards. And those are the ones identified in the Thriving at Work report. So they're government backed, and also InspireAll has got behind them as well. So we ask you in that document to look at where you think you're going well and where you think you could improve. What was it that you learned through that process? Oh.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So again, because of the scoring process, it allowed you to judge is probably the wrong word, because this isn't about judgment. It's just about starting conversations and creating a culture whereby this priority of well-being sits naturally. So looking back, you can absolutely identify as an organisation what you're doing really well. And then you can also reflect on where you could do better. But I think the great thing about that diagnostic tool is that you can actually see what's realistic. So actually in changing things and using where you are to get to where you want to be, as I said before, it doesn't have to be about big changes. It doesn't have to be about expensive changes. There could be no expense at all with what's needed. It's just knowing and understanding where you sit right here, right now, where you want to go. But I think the biggest thing is that you're having those conversations and you're putting that well-being as a priority amongst everybody. So actually, the diagnostic tool, if nothing else, enabled me to have conversations with my team, a real true reflection on me as a manager, but also the processes in place. And again, really reflecting on whether the policy met the operational and the action. And that for me it was a big void. So actually get there, and because that's where we really want to be, that it's in the DNA, it's something that happens naturally and exists just because that's the culture.
And I think that culture thing is the key word, isn't it? This isn't about documents in a drawer and ticking boxes. This is about, is there congruence between what you say that you want to do and how your policies, procedures, cultures, behaviours, everything all sit together. And actually sometimes it's better to do a few things well. One of the things we tried to do with the survey was to understand the capacity and the aptitude of organisations to change. And we know that they're in different places. So that tool is there wherever you are to help you calibrate and look at where best to act. So
yeah, absolutely.
So when you thought, are there any of those sort of specific actions that you're able to share with us that you decided to take action on, or where you're starting to look at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, from an organisational perspective, we had third-party support. So we knew that if something happened, we had a process in order to help. But like many things, it felt more like a cure rather than a prevention. And actually what I wanted to do was generate a preventable environment, somewhere where we could highlight things and, you know, capture people before it got to a point that they needed that kind of cure element. So very much so around, okay, how do we change that need for that end help? What needs to be in place? So I'm thinking around kind of bite-sized conversations whereby that's an open forum that everyone can just sit and just generally discuss any issues, any challenges, any thoughts. I'm also thinking around, again, a survey that goes out once a year. You know, maybe we need to do that more often, so we're capturing information and feedback more regularly. Absolutely using that information to then make necessary changes. Conversations in the workplace, so again, asking the how are you, but with the utmost intention of really listening to the answers and then being ready to react and be able to do something about anything that might come back as a possible red flag. I'm also really keen, I mean, like I said earlier, you know, being on the wellbeing journey, and this isn't my first start, I really wanted to encapsulate this as something that we really felt as a priority years ago. So I trained some of my team in mental health first aid then. My team's changed since then. So again, it's revisiting training, more people doing that training. Does it need to be fully fledged training, or actually does some of the team, i.e. maybe some of those youngers that are only coming in on a casual basis, maybe they just need snippets of information that will help feed their confidence and competence to be able to be having those conversations, whether it be the recipient or whether it be, you know, the person that's got those challenges. So yeah, loads of different kind of areas where I thought actually we could do better here. And again, all of those things don't have to cost money, they are just slight changes.
Or use it.
I also introduced
thinking more coherently about what you already have and how you use it. So I think data is a really interesting one in that, in terms of the data you might collect on absence, absenteeism, and looking at what you already have and how accurate that be and what that indicates. So for example, if you were getting, you know, 30 back injuries all of a sudden, you'd suddenly think, okay, there's something wrong with that. Well, how are you monitoring the kind of mental health stuff and seeing if there are preventative issues there? Because absolutely, prevention is the ideal. And that's another thing about the pledge, is we're trying to create cultures that are healthy, good places to work, so that we can prevent those mental health concerns from developing. Of course, there will always be ones that come through, but most of the things that employers can do to look after their employees' mental health is provide good work and provide a good working environment. They're not mental health clinical interventions, as it were. So before we finish up, if people are, I know, and we can both completely know how difficult the pandemic has been for a lot of organisations in health and fitness. People have got a lot on, but they're thinking about signing up to the pledge, and it just feels like another thing to do. What would be your thoughts on that?
Well, again, if nothing else, the last 12 to 15 months has shown us how vitally important well-being is. And again, not just reacting when something happens, but absolutely being part of that prevention solution package. You know, workplaces will benefit, you know, if we're looking after our team, ensuring that they've got workplaces, ensuring that their mental health and their well-being is being looked after and understood is probably a good, it's got to be understood as well. That's going to benefit the organisation. We've already alluded to absenteeism. If we are generating an amazing culture of health, well-being, that will have a knock-on effect. Less sickness days, less impact to the business, employees that are really bought in and loyal to the organisation and the brand. It's just a positive, and actually the time it does take is nominal really for the actual gains that you get from actually doing it.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being one of our founder pledges, and thank you for all your support and just generally being brilliant. And if you're listening to Shelley and thinking that you would like to sign up to the Good Work Pledge and help support your organisation and your employees, you can find more information at workplacementalwealth.com/pledge. So thanks a lot for joining me today, Shelley, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.